The problem was not a technical problem in terms of Adam and Eve's dressmaking skills. The problem was, what should they be clothed in, and why were they being clothed? Now, as John has just explained, it's all to do with their behavior, their sin against God. It's not about whether they really did need to add clothes, because we know that they didn't, because of the environment. When God finished the world, he declared it to be very good. And originally they were naked. So what does that tell you about the environment? Well, it wasn't too hot and it wasn't too cold. The sun wasn't so strong that it would burn their skin like it does in Queensland here, or give them skin cancer. That's definitely not very good. It wasn't cold enough to freeze their feet. And we also know that the plants were very good, because later on, when God actually did curse the ground and the environment did change, there were thorns and thistles. But before that, thorns are not very good because they damage your skin. So they didn't need clothing to protect themselves from the immediate environment. Now, later on, the environment degenerated very, very severely, and people certainly need clothes today to protect them from the environment, in both the heat and the cold, and also the hazards of the environment. We still live with the thorns and thistles. But back in the Garden of Eden, immediately after Adam and Eve had sinned, the problem was not the environment, the problem was not their dressmaking skills, the problem was their sin, as John has explained. And therefore, the reason that they were covered was because of God was going to deal with the skin and with the sin. And the first way he did that was with animal skins. And he would not have created new ones specifically for that purpose, like the question that we got on the Ask site suggests. The creation was complete. It was finished. So God used what was already there. So there were animals already there. God would not do anything that was deceptive. He wouldn't have created new skins without the animal. That would have been deceptive. So it's very clear, if you read the description of what happened very clearly, God would have had to have killed animals, which would have involved the shedding of blood to produce those coverings for Adam and Eve. And so that was the first clothing, and that serves as a constant reminder of why we actually wear clothes. And later on, in the Bible, you will read about people wearing clothes made out of plant fibers. In fact, it describes the clothes of the high priest were made out of fine linen, which is a plant material. Now, we think of linen as being a rather coarse sort of fabric. It's very lovely to wear in hot weather because it is lovely and cool and it breathes. And fine linen was a beautiful fabric. It was like silk. It was a really beautiful luxury fabric. And it's interesting, if you go to the book of Revelation, where Jesus is described, first of all, he visits John on the island of Patmos, and there is a description there of Christ. Now, this is the risen, glorified Christ, and he is wearing a beautiful white robe made of fine linen with a golden sash. So there is Jesus in all his glory, clothed in a glorious and beautiful outfit. And it describes the people in heaven as wearing white robes. It also describes angels wearing white robes made of fine linen. So this was a most beautiful and glorious fabric. And at the very end, it describes the people who were qualified to come to the marriage supper of the Lamb. So that's all of the people who have been redeemed because of the shed blood of Christ, who have put their faith in Christ and become part of God's family, are now at this glorious and wonderful celebration that's described at the end of the towards the end of the book of Revelation, and they are dressed in beautiful fine linen. So that's something that we've got to look forward to. And Craig has an interesting presentation to give us about clothing and identity. And whenever I think about this whole topic, I'm reminded of a rather lovely hymn called Jesus, Thy Blood and Righteousness, My Beauty Are, My Glorious Dress. We can go to that marriage supper of the Lamb and be part of this great celebration with all of the redeemed people as part of God's family, dressed in our beautiful fine linen robes. And the last verse of the first verse of that hymn, rather, Jesus, thy blood and righteousness, my beauty are, my glorious dress. Amidst flaming worlds in these array, with joy shall I lift up my head. And then the last verse is, oh, let the dead now hear thy voice, now bid thy ransomed ones rejoice. Their beauty this, their glorious dress, Jesus, thy blood and righteousness. In the beginning, the animal skins were not a permanent solution to the problem of sin. It's only Jesus' blood and righteousness that was the permanent solution, so that we can rejoice in heaven, surrounded by angels and people wearing this glorious dress, fine linen, um, and beautiful white robes, something to look forward to. Now, if we can